Hi everyone. Welcome back to Woo Can Cook. My name is Wesley, and this is a show where we are slowly cooking our way through all of the food from my childhood. Today we're diving back into our series dedicated to the Bay Area restaurant scene with a shot at a dish that, to be absolutely honest, I sort of accidentally stumbled across recently, which are the crispy Brussels sprouts found at Lake Chalet in Oakland, California. Now, those that have been following along with this series will know that we more typically take inspiration from spots here in the Oakland Chinatown area, where you'll find a wide array of unique takes to Asian American cuisine. So, when I stumbled across these sweet, spicy, umami-packed Brussels sprouts at an Americana seafood spot like Lake Chalet, I was more than a little bit intrigued because, how did this end up here? So today we're going to do our very best to recreate Lake Chalet's wildly popular Brussels sprouts dish with a quick wok sear, as well as a deeper dive into what I think is the single most important aspect to any Brussels sprouts dish, which is of course how do you navigate the stem end of this vegetable, because anybody that has ever eaten this part knows that it tastes bitter and awful, and is probably why your childhood association with Brussels sprouts is so negative. Finally, rounding this all out, we're also going to do a nice glaze to our Brussels sprouts inspired by some of our fried chicken recipes, making use of a little bit of chili oil, some sweet chili sauce, and fish sauce to try and replicate those sweet and spicy umami qualities as well. Okay, so let's get into it.
Every time that I try to write this song, every time I end up a little bit more lost. 'Cause all around I see chaos.
Alright, so kicking things off here first, as you might expect, we're starting off with some aromatic veggies for our wok fry. This is going to be 4 cloves of crushed and minced garlic, followed by 1 inch or about 1 tablespoon of finely minced ginger. Then next up is going to be pretty much the only other ingredient in our dish today, which is of course our Brussels sprouts, about a pound's worth. Now, if you're like me and you grew up your entire childhood hating these icky, bitter tasting vegetables, then more than likely it's because you grew up eating a poorly prepared version of Brussels sprouts, which to be fair is also because they're a little bit tricky to cook properly. The problem is that this little stem end here is super bitter and acrid tasting, which again is probably the taste that you associate with Brussels sprouts. So, oftentimes the move that I see a lot of chefs do is chop off the living daylight of this stem, which is also a problem because if you chop off too much of the stem, then the Brussels sprout starts to fall apart entirely, like so. This is not good because those loose leaves are just going to burn up in the sear later. So what we want to do instead is just chop off the smallest bit of stem that we can manage, because this is really the only part that's going to taste bitter. Then with the rest of the stem intact, we can slice these in half and they won't fall apart. Moving on to our glaze next. Now, I improvised this recipe a few months back and more or less ended up borrowing the glaze from our Vietnamese fried chicken recipe, so if this starts looking a little bit familiar, this is where that came from. We're starting off with 4 tablespoons of soy sauce and a single tablespoon of sesame oil to start, followed by 2 tablespoons of rice vinegar for some brightness and 2 tablespoons of fish sauce for some nice fermented umami. Then for our heat element, this is 2 tablespoons of chili crisp oil, which to me is one of the more outstanding and identifiable elements to our original Lake Chalet inspiration. Then finally, because this is a glaze after all, we're adding 4 tablespoons or a 1/4 cup each of my favorite sticky, sweet, and savory ingredients, which is going to be some sweet chili sauce and honey. I'm mixing this all up to combine, then we're heading over to the stove to get started on our wok sear next. Over on the stove, I have my wok heating up as hot as possible, then I'm adding 4 tablespoons of peanut oil, and as always, long yao for that nice non-stick surface. Then going in here first are my Brussels sprouts, flat side down for 2.5 minutes undisturbed to maximize the amount of char that we get from our sear here. This of course means that you'll want to add these one at a time, which is going to take an extra minute or 2 to do rather than just dumping the whole thing in, but I promise that it's going to be worth it. 2.5 minutes later, I'm giving these all a toss to reveal this glorious sear that we have going on. Then I'm letting these go for another 2 to 3 minutes in the wok to cook through before removing and repeating with my remaining Brussels sprouts. This took me 2 batches altogether here. Next up, moving on to our wok fry, I'm clearing out the wok, reheating, adding another 2 tablespoons of peanut oil, and giving 1 more long yao. Then going in here first are my aromatic veggies for 15 seconds until fragrant. Here's my garlic and ginger going in. Then going in next is our glaze. Now, I've said this in pretty much every fried chicken dish that we have ever done, and I will also say it again. The single most important thing that you can do with a glaze is to make sure that it is fully reduced before combining. I had mine on heat here for nearly 5 minutes today. If you combine your Brussels sprouts with your glaze too early, then you'll end up boiling them, which, just like with fried chicken, is gonna ruin all of those wonderfully crispy edges that we just spent 20 minutes creating in that wok sear. So this is gonna feel like an eternity, because let's face it, you're essentially watching water boil here, but 4 to 5 minutes later, our glaze should look thick and sticky, almost like the consistency of honey. Then, once this is fully reduced, we're finally adding our Brussels sprouts back to the wok, giving a very quick toss to combine and immediately removing from heat. Finally, I'm finishing these off with another spoonful of chili oil on top, followed by a pinch of sesame seed, and we're ready to eat. Okay, so I don't know about y'all, but I have made and eaten a lot of Brussels sprouts in my life, ranging from really terrible ones that I used to choke down when I was a kid, to some of the most delicious side dishes that I have ever had. So I am well aware of the potential that this vegetable has to either turn out horribly wrong or go really, really well. And I gotta say that these are some of the best Brussels sprouts that I have ever had. The wok sear and fry give them a crispy and crunchy texture, and I know I can hear the comments now, you have to bake your Brussels sprouts, Wesley. But I'm here to tell you though that you're wrong. This is the way. There's just something about the way that these Brussels sprouts are both simultaneously crispy and flash fried, but also tender once you bite into them too, which I'm convinced that you cannot create in an oven. Then finally paired with this, our chili oil and sweet chili sauce give the glaze a sweet and savory finish without adding too much moisture or mushiness thanks to our nice long reduction time. So I know that this can't possibly be the first Brussels sprouts recipe that you have ever come across, but I'm here to tell you that if you're not wok searing your Brussels sprouts, you're missing out. Okay, so that's it everyone. I hope you enjoyed this and I hope you give this one a shot. For those who are new to the channel, this one is part of a larger series dedicated to dishes from the Bay Area restaurant scene, so definitely check that series out next if you haven't yet, because there's a lot of these. For the Bay Area locals, Lake Chalet is located on Lake Merritt in Oakland, so definitely check them out as well if you haven't yet. Also, if you are local here in the Bay Area, the Woo Can Cook Fried Rice Pop-Up is back at Line 51 in Oakland tonight, so come by and say hi then if you can. More about that at woocancook.com/eats. As always, like, comment, subscribe, share, be nice interneters, and I'll see you soon. Bye.
And tell me, do you ever feel